Pleasure to be here. Thank you, my
The
friend.
pleasure is all mine, John. And of course, with the Ocala Arts and Entertainment Podcast, I'm your host, Sean Thomas. We always kick things off with a smile or two, In this case, it could be one smile with John, right?
John.
Or we might get two. Listen, you are in for a treat because I'm sitting here with a wonderful soul, John Elliott, who I met recently. And John ended up at my rhythmic doorstep where I do some drumming and invite the community. And the way how he stood with his camera and came to do some, photo, capture some of what we were doing, he made me realize that this guy is serious about taking photos of images. So our conversation today will start off with John being age 14 and stepping into having his wonderful photographs. A newspaper is going to now invite you to share some of your work with them. But before that, John, I know you are in Florida. And what happened for you to want to move in the direction of being a photographer?
Well, before Florida, there was New York City.
Oh,
I grew up in the main streets of New York City,
Right.
a few blocks from Harlem, and I was surrounded by different cultures.
right.
We used to go downtown and go to all of the ethnic restaurants and all of the markets and hear all of the languages. So this is in my blood. And my father was very cosmopolitan. He was interested in the world and he shared that. And so I had friends from all sorts of backgrounds. And at the age of 13, he announced to me and my two sisters and my mom, "Oh, we're moving to Florida." So
Oh.
that was devastating to all of us because, we had our friends and our familiarity.
Right.
But I'm inherently a fairly adventuresome person, right? So we moved down to Florida, moved to Coral Gables, Florida, and I immediately started trying to learn Spanish because all these Cuban American kids were there
Okay.
in the junior high school talking, and I wanted to know what they were saying.
Yes.
So now, junior high school is important because it was there that I took a drafting class, and part of the class was learning about typography and setting type, but the other part was darkroom and cameras.
Okay.
So that was kind of osmosis. I learned about the darkroom, I learned about the camera and how to do exposures, and it was fascinating to me because I love gadgets and I love visual things.
Yes.
I'm an artist at heart. This is my principal core, is to be an artist.
Yes.
I didn't recognize it back then. But so with that information at age 14, I started trying to save up for money for a camera. And I was able to get a small camera, a very simple camera, a 35 millimeter film camera. And I started going around to take pictures. And now there was a site that was under construction, a mini skyscraper, maybe 8 stories tall.
Right.
And I snuck into the construction site, which I used to do in New York City. We used to go all over the projects and sneak in and get in trouble and jeopardize
Like
our
we say, to
lives.
get in trouble.
Yeah, and not the good kind of trouble like John Lewis
Right.
promotes, but
Yeah.
bad trouble where the police were chasing us.
Yes.
So I snuck into the construction site because I wanted to go to the top, and I had my camera and I started taking pictures of the scenes and the construction on the top. And so I developed that in my little closet darkroom, and I had these pictures. Now the local newspaper, the Coral Gables Times-Guide, was the only newspaper that I knew. I didn't know about the Miami Herald really.
Right.
So I went there and I showed them the pictures, and I kind of pushed my way into getting them to publish them. And they did the next week.
Beautiful.
And that was a huge excitement for me, that you get your first publishing. And then in 1972, the Republican and Democratic conventions came to Miami Beach. And so I convinced my mom to let me take the bus down because we didn't have a car. And I rode the bus down for a couple days and walked all around, and the hippies and the zippies were down there. And I got to see all sorts of craziness and fights with the police and tension and drugs and everything. You know, it was like all of a sudden. And so I had my camera there and I took pictures of that.
Right.
And so all of this frenzy and activity was really exciting to me. I realized that I loved taking pictures of activities and events that were topical. And so I used those pictures for my high school class in journalism, and this actually became a little portfolio for me, these pictures.
Right.
I started looking when I was a junior in high school, what's a good school to go to for journalism? And so a number of schools, but then there was Ohio University, which had not only journalism, but fine arts photography.
Right.
So that sealed the deal. And I drove up with my mom 26 hours from Miami to Athens, Ohio, and started going to school there. And that was a huge excitement for me.
So the support is there from both mom and dad, what you're doing. Well, what kind of reaction are you getting from them when you first landed that, yes, from the newspaper, we will publish this set of photos or one photo? What kind of reaction are you getting from them to say, hey, my photo is now going to be in this newspaper?
Well, my mom was always very supportive. Unfortunately, my father at the time was out of the picture. My parents got divorced about this time.
Right.
When I was 16 or 17.
Okay.
And he was always in his own world. He was a difficult father, very abusive, and so we were glad that they were divorced. But my mom was always very supportive, and just about anything that I was interested in, she was really endorsing.
Right.
I was also interested in music and traveling and things like that. She's always been very supportive, so I consider her a saint.
Yes.
She's passed on now. She died from the COVID a couple of years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
At age almost 101.
Oh.
So I can't complain. We can't complain, me and my sisters. But she was always very supportive and gave me her blessings and showed a lot of interest and appreciation and talked to her friends about what was going on. So she was happy that I found a place at Ohio University.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she's making this trip with you. 26 miles? You
26
said?
hours.
26 hours.
Yeah, it's a long drive with your mother.
And is it with your sisters too? Or
No, they were older than me. They had already done their thing. And,
okay, so.
yeah, I'm the baby of the family.
So you're making your way to Ohio to start your fine arts degree journey.
Yeah.
How did that unfold? How did things happen there for you in terms of meeting, networking with folks, and building your career? And how did that turn out?
Well, Ohio University was a huge eye-opener for me because not only did I learn more about journalism and photography, but I learned about the world.
Right.
And I became involved. First, I did the journalistic thing. I joined the yearbook staff, and I was given the position of managing editor, which was really a feather in my cap.
Right.
That journalism phase, I was actually a cartoonist for the newspaper 1 year or two, but that was kind of slowly fading away as the fine arts came into it. I learned art history,
Right.
which is super important if you want to pursue any medium. You need to know the art history, going back to the cave drawings.
Okay.
And I was also learning about politically the world. Now, one of the things that was going on at the time was apartheid was very much in the news, South Africa, and I decided that I wanted our student senate, which I was a part of. I was a commissioner on the student senate. I said, we need to divest our university from stocks that are supporting South African government. And so that was a big part of my life for a year and a half. And finally, when I was a senior at the end of the year, the university did announce that they were divesting from South African supporting stocks. And thereafter, apartheid was dissolved and South Africa was free. Nelson Mandela was freed. So I'm just mentioning this because my eyes were beginning to widen, my perspective was beginning to widen about the real world.
Of course.
Diversity, I was very much involved. One year I was the Commissioner of Minority and Women's Affairs, so I started planning events that would promote diversity and attention to African American culture, diversity in the LGBTI community, and bringing artists to spend some of the student senate money to bring these groups to perform and to amplify their messages. So that was all became very important to me. I became very much a human rights advocate in a lot of ways, and also I started being an animal rights advocate. I started campaigning against some of the most horrific things that were going on, which is like steel jaw leg traps, which trapped bears and other animals, and it's extremely cruel. And I started my journey to become a vegan at that time. This was the seeds for me becoming a vegan, first vegetarian. So everything was the university, those 4 years, and then I went to Harvard University and I studied Arabic. I learned about Middle East and Islam, and so it was just a matter of flowering of my interests and my attention to the greater world.
Yes. So all of that took place at Ohio University, and now you're heading in to learn Arabic and that kind of stuff at Harvard. Tell us about what is happening after Harvard, because at some point, you being a photographer for the U.S. Army, that's coming up later on.
Much later,
Much later on, that's coming up. So you're now at Harvard, so you migrated from Ohio. You're into Harvard. Mommy is in the picture still. She's...
Sure, yeah, she's always sent me money. You know, we were living paycheck to paycheck. My mom was newly divorced, and this is back when women didn't have a lot of equity. You know, women didn't have line of credit. She had to start fresh. And she lived in a very small apartment. And when I went back every vacation time, I was embarrassed by the situation. You know, it was very humbling. But as I traveled, I realized, well, no matter what, we're so much better off
than a lot of
7/8 of the world. And that's the reality. So I had to put everything in perspective. And so when I finished my undergraduate studies, I went back to Florida and I started working on some my master's, my MBA. I started working for an insurance company as an audiovisual specialist. So I was able to use my photography and my communications, and they had a program where they would pay for us to go through to get our master's in an MBA. And I also studied at Florida International University. I studied computer science and some other technical things. But always photography was there. I was always doing in fact, even in my mom's small apartment, I had a closet where I had my darkroom. So I would use photography. And one of the first jobs I got before the insurance company, I was for about 6 months, I was a portrait photographer for Bryn Allen Studios in Tampa. I was trained in Tampa, and then I went back to South Florida. I took pictures all day of seniors' portraits. We had 7 portraits and also corporate portraits. And it was so stultifying and boring. I just couldn't stand it. But it was a really good background because I can take really good portraits of people now. And that's helped me when I became an audiovisual specialist in the insurance company. I had to do a lot of portraits of executives and take pictures for the annual report under a lot of pressure. And of course, let's keep this all in mind that this is the days of film, where you took your picture. If you didn't have the settings just right, the next day your film came back, and if it wasn't just right, you were in trouble with everybody, your subject and your boss.
Oh,
So this is a lot of tension, a lot of pressure back then. It's not like today where you've got the ability to
maneuver.
fudge things. Yeah.
Right, right. You could fix things as you go.
So all of this was really good basic information, foundational information. So there were a couple of other odd jobs that I had before I worked for the insurance company. I drove a taxi for about 6 weeks in Miami, the night shift from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. Had a lot of adventures there, but I met some really cool people
Right.
in downtown Miami. Saw a lot of crime. But all of this was exciting to me because remember, I like adventure.
Yes.
Right? I'm an adventuresome person. I'm not afraid of things being challenging. You know, I think we all grow with challenges, and that's always been a part of my life. So then, I fell in love with a young lady. She broke my heart.
Oh boy.
I decided to quit the insurance company, and I decided to go off on a big adventure in the Mediterranean countries, Europe and North Africa. And I wanted to practice my Arabic. I wanted to learn more about Islam. And I didn't have much money, but I just took off. I had a backpack, I had my camera and flash. And so that's where the Human Pulse series, this photography series that you'll hear more about,
That is how that began.
that's where it started, because
Okay.
everything kind of coalesced. My interest in people, my interest in harmony and brotherhood, and the social aspects, pouring light on diversity. That all came together when I was on my Mediterranean adventure that summer of 1983.
Yes.
So I started off in Spain. I backpacked. I slept on the beach. Took the boat across to North Africa. I had all sorts of difficult challenges. And then I decided to cross the Sahara Desert with my backpack, and that was a big adventure, very scary, sleeping at night under this huge blanket of stars.
Wow.
And we didn't have bottled water back then, so my hydration came from buying cucumbers in the supermarket. I put cucumbers in my backpack and I would eat them. But that was the hottest I've ever been in my life when I entered the Sahara Desert. So I crossed the Sahara Desert successfully. I came to Tunisia, and lo and behold, I had this great opportunity to work on a film. It's about the life of Jesus Christ. It was called Anno Domini. And so I worked briefly on that film, and then I did that, and then I went into Italy. I had all sorts of very spiritual adventures there, seeing the Basilica.
There's a whole lot happening there. I mean, so far what you've said, this is almost like this could be a Netflix documentary, because you're talking about your heart being broken by this lady you met, but then that is now propelling you into move even further so that you could start seeing and opening up your eyes more. And now you have your cucumber, that's how you're going to be hydrated. I mean, that's a whole lot of stuff happening. Wow.